Dad, can I get my pizza from last night? Like, it's 10 in the morning. Stop it. All right, we'll give it another minute or so as people start coming in. And thank you to those that are joining us right before the holiday Thanksgiving break. So hopefully everyone's getting ready to take some time off work, spend some time with family, relaxing. If you're lucky enough, go on a cruise, get away, get away from the cold, whatever it may look like. Let's see. Maureen, are you doing anything fun for Thanksgiving?
Eating. That's fun.
Lynn, how about you? Anything, any big plans?
Just the family stuff. Yeah.
Just the family stuff. Mike, I know you're probably going to Vegas or something.
No. To do the buffets? No. We have like 25 people coming, family and friends, so we have a big old food bash planned. So
good for you guys. How about you, John?
No, just a quiet Thanksgiving, my wife and I this year.
Oh, nice and relaxing.
So relaxing.
Yep, that's the key. That's the key right there. So good. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. And I figured might as well just talk around while everyone's trickling in. But thank you very much again, everyone, for joining us for this CTAA and CalSTART Fleet Transition Planning webinar. This is our 5th in the series of 7 that we have, and all of these are recorded. I believe CTAA is possibly sending these out afterwards with the slides. I can't remember. Again, we've been doing these. These have been a lot of fun. It's just a lot of information. It's very dense. So please, along the way, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, put them in the Q&A box, raise your hand, whatever it may be. So if we go to the next slide, Mike, if you don't mind. So today we are going to be talking about utilities and facilities. So this is actually a really exciting topic. It's one of the most asked questions anytime we were doing fleet transition planning, as well as just project managing any deployment of zero-emission vehicles. Myself, Jared Schneider, Senior Director and Bus Initiative Lead for CalSTART. And then with us, we also have Maureen Marshall, Senior Director and the Midwest Regional Director Lead for CalSTART. John Havrilla with Wendell, and also Lynn Felsen with DTE. So this is a really great panel. There are a lot of questions I'm sure that will come out of this, but like I said, please feel free to ask them and we'll try and get everything answered along the way. Next slide, Mike. So quick agenda, we'll do kind of an interim recap. Again, I'm trying to keep this within 5 minutes. We'll see how this works. Then John will be presenting on infrastructure planning. Lynn will be talking about utility coordination, and then we'll have time for Q&A for everyone to ask questions as we wrap up. Next slide. So real quick, just wanted to, as we usually do it towards the beginning of these webinars, just kind of talk about what's going on in the transit industry, what we're seeing, if there are any updates. Doing these kind of back-to-back, you would think there really wouldn't be that much information, but since talking with everyone last week, I think it was, we have had a new, I guess, some new information coming out. As you may have seen from Proterra filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, all of, I think it was like 2 months ago. Within the last couple of weeks, we have seen the Volvo Group purchase Proterra's battery division, and as of last week, the bid went in, and it is in the acceptance phase for Phoenix Motor Car to purchase the bus division from Proterra. So that is actually kind of an interesting development. But Maureen, I'd love to bring you in to talk about kind of what we went over from the last webinar.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. You know, this transit industry is constantly moving and changing and evolving. And, you know, there's many changes that can be scary, but yeah, I think the changes that we're seeing take place are helping provide us greater success for the future. And looking back on our webinar number 4, which was back in early November, we talked about federal and state policy. As many of you on the line know today, and those of you joining us today, federal and state policy play a key critical role in the success of any transition planning or any transition of a fleet. The federal policy element and the state policy element really feed into the requirements and the regulations that drive the industry forward, as well as provide the incentives and funding that is needed to help offset the gap costs that we're currently dealing with at this early stage in the transition. And I hate to say early stage because I think we're getting, 2 steps forward with every day, because we're seeing some cost parities come in play. We're also seeing more availability of infrastructure, and we'll hear a little bit more about that when we hear from Lynn today from DTE. But when we build out our transition planning, that federal and state policy piece is really critical, because without it, that's really an anchor and a hook of success. And so we look forward to continuing those discussions with the team today and with those that we're involved in through this process, because when we brought in our partners at Boundary Stone and also Ameren, Illinois, who came to the table with kind of a state of play of how things are going in the industry and where policy is moving to, and how policy, even at a state level, helps enforce what the utilities are also doing. So we'll touch maybe a little bit on that a little bit today as we move forward in today's call. But with that, I love to turn it over now to our special guest, our first on the list today, John I'm going to say it wrong again, Havrilla. I got it right. Havrilla.
Yes.
John Havrilla. I love it. Principal Energy Services at Wendell. We're really excited to have you here today and give you the chance to showcase the great work you're doing across the U.S.
Thank you, Maureen. Next slide, please. Just a little bit background on Wendell. Wendell is a full-service architecture and engineering firm. We also have an energy efficiency company as part of our firm. We also have construction management capabilities. We have over 280 employees, 15 offices nationwide. The little flags on the map are actually Wendell's offices. The shaded areas are where we're licensed to do business in New York or in the country. Next slide, please. Nationally, in the federally funded projects, we have a national expanse. We're currently doing work in Alaska and the 50 states, and the little bullets are projects that we've done. Again, we're licensed in 38 states. A lot of these are, all of these here on this slide are transit projects. Next slide. So Wendell has a very large presence in the transit market. One of the things we do is maintenance facilities. We do everything from extremely large maintenance facilities like the WMATA Northern Bus Division in DC, PVTA maintenance bus facility in Springfield, Massachusetts, some of the stations that we designed from scratch. The next slide. We also do BRT and LRT. So examples of some of the BRTs we've done is Greater Richmond Transit, Pulse BRT. We designed that system. MARTA's Summerhill BRT shelter design. We did those. We also integrated en route charging into those at a later step, working with CALSTART on that project. Next slide, please. And we also do intermodals. Niagara Falls Intermodal Transportation Center was both rail as well as bus, and was the international crossing for Niagara Falls. So it had a lot of different United States Customs House, DHS, border inspections, et cetera. It was a fairly large project. It took 13 years from start to finish to get completed due to licensing and rail issues, et cetera. One on the right is Chatham Area Transit Intermodal Station, which was built in historic Savannah, and won several awards for that, but also had transit as well as Greyhound. Some of the stuff that we're doing in battery electric buses, we do everything from transition plan services, which is what we're here to talk about today and is a critical step, all the way through implementation. We have also been involved in rate negotiations with the utilities. Some of the pictures you see here are from Greater Bridgeport Transit. We had to have a new main transformer put in by the utility, switchgear, and then chargers. And in Greater Bridgeport, we used plug-in chargers, which is not uncommon. The picture on the bottom right is Worcester, Massachusetts, and that was an en route charger. That was our first project back in 2013. So we've been working on battery electric bus implementation for some time. Next slide. Most of you are probably most interested in plug-in type charging, but we've also done, the pictures on the left are induction charging, where we looked at that for New York City Transit MTA at 26 of their garages. In the upper right, you'll see Stanford, where they're looking at pantographs. So, anything that you may need, we look at pantographs, induction, plug-in, whatever is right for the application.
John, as I look at your designs here, they're really clean and really approachable. They make you want to go visit those centers. When I look at this pantograph option, do you offer that? Is that inside the depot or is it en route?
Well, we do both, but this one here is in depot charging, and this was a existing garage, which presents challenges because most indoor garages do not have roof membranes or roof structures that can handle the weight of pantographs. So we had to design a superstructure that goes underneath that structure to hold the pantographs. But this is an indoor pantograph system for a transit agency. This is in Connecticut.
Thank you.
Next slide. We have over 30 battery electric bus projects of all range of sizes, small transit agencies to very large transit agencies. You'll see half or 3/4 of the way down the list on the left, Kanawha Valley Transit Zero Emissions Plan. We developed the plan for Kanawha Valley in West Virginia. Rochester, we also have a bunch of school districts that we do zero emission plans for. So we cover the spectrum from very large to very small. Greenville Transit O&M facility, we did battery electric buses and CNG. So we do CNG, hydrogen, battery electric, and cover the full spectrum. Picture on the bottom right is Blacksburg Transit at Virginia Tech University. We put in a intermodal station there for the university and Blacksburg Transit, and also put in en route charging in that area as well. Next slide. So infrastructure needs, that's what we're here to talk about. Again, some of the pictures are Greater Bridgeport Transit, but what I want to focus on is the graphic in the center. There's several different components to this. There's the utility side, there's the customer side, and electrical panels, switchgear, chargers, and then how you connect to the bus. So there's local utility capacity issues, impact on maintenance equipment, charging stations, dispensers. And one of the things we encourage our clients is to get in touch with your local utility as early in the process as you can and get them on board. And I don't want to steal Lynn's thunder, but it's critical that you get your utility partner involved as soon as you possibly can. Next slide. So when we look at a transition plan, there's a lot of components that go into it. Vehicle information, the types of vehicles, the number of vehicles, the duty cycle of those vehicles, including operational hours, vehicle replacement cycle. How often are these vehicles going to be replaced? I mean, if you're looking at paratransit, it may be every 5 to 7 years. If you're looking at a transit bus, it may be every 12 to 13 years. And then vehicle storage. Where are these vehicles housed? Are they indoors, outdoors? It's critical because you also have to consider most of the electric buses are lithium-ion batteries, which pose a fire risk, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Available electrical vehicle configuration and timing. What's available in the market today and what do we see coming into the future? Is there a direct replacement for your vehicles today? Some of your fleet there are, some of them there may not be. Available battery sizes is critical. Available charger configurations. And then charging infrastructure, level 2 or level 3 chargers, which do you need? Plug-in, pantograph, induction, vehicle to grid charging. That's becoming more of a desire on the part of some, but that's, you need special infrastructure, and you also have to work closely with your utility if you plan on doing vehicle to grid. EV implementation cost factors. Obviously, there's cost differences in the vehicle costs. There's utility system upgrade costs. If the utility has to upgrade their infrastructure to serve your load, some of that cost could be borne by the transit agency or the group that's electrifying. We need to identify what those costs are. Internal electrical distribution upgrade costs, everything from the meter back into the building. What's that cost going to be? And then O&M cost implications, maintenance, fuel, energy. Maintenance of a battery electric vehicle is significantly less in most cases than its ICE counterpart, but there are other components that you need to look at. And then backup power supply costs and resiliency issues. Site constraints. Most agencies that I've looked at are very constrained on their site. There's additional utility equipment that needs to go in, distribution equipment, and charging equipment. We need to find places for all of that. Local utility capacity, availability of required capacity, reliability, redundancy of power feeds, cost of system upgrades to the client, and timing of system upgrades. Utility upgrades can take time. We need to plan for that. One of the things that the utility is going to need from you is, what is the load that you're looking at, and how does that grow over time? Site electrical distribution, existing space capacity, new distribution requirements, and operational impacts. Future technology. We want to try to plan for the future to the extent we can see what that future is going to hold. Battery sizes continue to increase. So if you've got longer routes that may be more constrained on today's battery capacities, we may want to look at putting them in the transition plan in later stages, when new vehicle battery capacities may be able to make those routes easier. Or you may have to split up routes, or you may have to do en route charging. Charger sizes and configurations. As battery sizes increase, charger sizes typically increase. And then there's EV implementation schedule factors, phasing of implementation. You're not going to do this all at once. So what is the implementation plan? Typically, we base it on vehicle replacement schedules, utility system upgrades, and internal distribution system upgrades. There's lead time on all of this equipment. Switchgear is still almost 2 years in lead time. So all of that has to be planned for as you do a transition plan. And then last but not least is staff training, driver training on electric vehicles, maintenance training on high voltage DC systems. Both the vehicles and the chargers are high voltage DC systems that people need to be trained on working on.
John, I'm going to circle back around to your supply chain item on the switchgear. A little more than just a year ago, it was the vehicles that were in the long lead item. Now it's the infrastructure. And you mentioned 2 years.
Yes, it can be upwards of 2 years.
In some cases, we're hearing 46 weeks, which is, just shy of a year. What are some of the factors that are driving that long lead time? It
actually is voltage of the gear is in some cases, and the size of the gear. So depending upon how much infrastructure you need, if we have to go to medium voltage or like a 13.8 kV system, then the lead times increase on that gear. If you're all at 480 volt, then we can typically get shorter lead times. But it really depends on how much power you're going to need and what the utility can supply. So it's really working with the utility to understand what your growth is, what your load is, and therefore what you're going to need.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that.
Typical constraints, vehicle range limitations is usually the biggest. Charging duration requirements, utility demand requirements, demand on facilities and operations, and maintenance knowledge. So these are typically the number one constraints that people come up with for converting to battery electric. And a good plan helps you with these.
Yeah, the one thing that I like to add around maintenance, what we've learned is many on-site maintenance teams, only have one person dedicated to that role. And when you go to a battery electric vehicle, you need two persons, one to, supervise and assist, and another one to actually perform the duties. And that's been a huge constraint for these smaller transits.
Yes.
What type of advice would you give a transit who's, working in that type of situation?
It depends and it varies. One thing we do is we also look at, is there an opportunity to outsource any of that service, to either dealers or manufacturers, particularly when you get to charging equipment and things of that nature. That's a possibility. But at the end of the day, you may have to increase staff, which is a cost, an O&M cost that has to be recognized and accounted for.
Yep, exactly. Thank you.
Next slide. On range, just an example, and this is a real life example. This is a bus at Greater Bridgeport Transit, which is in Connecticut, and it has winter months. So we were able to look at what the data showed on this. But battery buses are not like your diesel counterpart. In cold temperatures, they are not as efficient, and it swings pretty drastically. The optimum that we saw was at about 65 degrees, 155 miles was what the vehicle was able to do. When it was at 30 degrees, it was 80 miles. And at 80 degrees, it was 135 miles. So temperature does impact a bus range. And this was a 440 kilowatt hour Proterra bus. Battery sizes are much larger now, so these ranges would be a little bit different. But when you look at routes and you look at buses on routes, you need to take into consideration things like temperatures and load on the bus, such as electric heat. If you're using electric heat as opposed to an auxiliary diesel heater, and those types of things. Next slide. Operations and maintenance impacts on workforce, as Maureen, you pointed out. We need to understand what the impacts to your workforce is. Safety. There's lockout tagout. These are high voltage electrical systems. There needs to be some additional safety training. And in training overall, the efficiency of a battery electric bus is significantly impacted by the driver training. A more efficient bus is really the result of a better driver. Bus maintenance, what needs to occur there, facilities maintenance, and then just overall operations. For example, if a battery electric bus is involved in an accident, what you may want to do is pull it into a garage. That's probably the last thing you want to do. What we're recommending our clients do is to pull it into a space outside the building and away from other buses until it can be assessed to make sure that the battery integrity is sound and that you're not going to have a battery fire. We had at CT Transit in Connecticut, a bus had a battery alarm, and it was a Friday evening. They pulled the bus into the maintenance garage with the intent to look at it on Monday morning. On Saturday, the bus started to snap, crackle, and pop and smoke. There were people in the garage on Saturday. They were able to push it out the door, and it immediately caught fire and was fully engulfed and burned to the ground. So, I don't want to scare people, because battery electric bus fires in the data we've seen occur with less frequency than internal combustion engine fires. But when they do occur, they're very difficult to put out, and they burn very hot. So it's something that needs to be taken into account. So operations and how you operate these buses is also something you need to take a look at. Next slide. Maintenance considerations, ventilation. There's a minimum amount of required ventilation to meet code for a garage. If you're going to charge indoors, then increased ventilation is going to be necessary to remove the heat created by those chargers. Fire protection, enhanced fire protection systems to suppress flames and protect structure from lithium-ion battery fires. Lifting equipment. Battery electric vehicles are significantly heavier than their counterparts due to the batteries. So a lift that may be in your maintenance facility, a lot of times they're fine, but they need to be checked to make sure they can lift the weight that you're now going to be looking at. Structural enhancements to the building structures to handle dispensers, pantographs, cables, conduits, etc. The picture on the bottom right is a reel system. It's a drop-down cable plug-in reel. The box to the left of it is the dispenser. And then, of course, you've got cables and conduits coming up to that. All of that adds weight to the ceiling, and you need to make sure that structurally you can handle that. And then
I was going to jump in here. If a transit were to go into that distributed energy system, as you're showing there in the bottom right, is it 1-for-1 where you have the energy panel and then the cord, or can you have more than one cord off of that?
No, 1-for-1 on this particular setup.
Yeah, thank you.
There are options with other systems where you can do up to 3-to-1 or even 4-to-1. 4-to-1.
That's good to know, because we've had several transits, reach out about distributed energy systems and, innovative ways to charge and not have a charger, in the ground, but a different way to charge and have it kind of be, for lack of a term, portable.
Yep.
Really makes sense.
Yep. And but this is only the dispenser, not the charger. The charger is sitting on the ground inside the facility.
Yeah.
And there's distance limitation. There's distance limitations between the dispenser and the bus, which is realistically about 27 feet today. And then there's also limitations between the dispenser and the charger, which is about 400 feet today. So, putting all this equipment in, we have to work through how we locate it all and still meet those distance requirements.
Thank you for sharing.
Yep. Fire protection, the codes have not kept up with battery electric vehicles. So the codes are silent. They say nothing. What we've found is that you can't do nothing. You risk your facility, you risk the building, you risk adjacent buses, etc. So what we've found is early detection. We have designed a fire protection system specifically for battery electric buses. We've had it approved through the state of Connecticut, through all the fire marshals, through the local jurisdictions. We also got approval from FM Global, the insurance companies. We've also talked with New York City fire marshals, and we've had other agencies, including in DC and across the country, approve our fire protection system, which is very much a high volume system. The other part is to get the fire department involved. Training of the fire department is critical. And then bus separation, we can do standard separation for buses, but that requires the high volume of water. Next slide. So all of that leading up to what is the transition plan? What's the typical scope of work? Obviously, project kickoff and status meetings with data collection on your facility, your vehicles, everything that I've kind of alluded to. What's your fire protection system look like? What do your lifts look like? Etc. Route analysis. Route analysis is critical to determine how a battery electric bus will perform on the routes that you have, and do they need to be modified at all, or what's the best battery to be run on that. Once that's done, conceptual charging strategy. How are we going to charge these buses? And part of that is looking at optimizing that charging strategy, because at the end of the day, you'll have a connected load of chargers to the system, but you're going to have an operational load. What is that load? And if we use a charge management system, can we limit that peak demand? And the utility is going to want to know how all of that's going to operate. So we need to really understand what the loads are, what the connected loads are, what the peak demand is expected to be, and how we're managing that peak demand. And then electric utility analysis, working with the utility through all of these various steps. Then out of that, the concept development and phasing plan, and then we can develop phasing plan estimates. coming out of that. Next slide. Just to show you what an outdoor charger farm may look like. Typically, we can put them in one area and then, distribute the dispensers. The dispensers are these boxes right here, located throughout, and then the chargers themselves are located in a farm in an area. So that's how a typical outdoor would be done. We've done a lot of indoor as well. Next slide. And that is all I had.
Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate that, and really informative on the facility side. A lot of needs and a lot of things that I didn't even know coming into this call, so appreciate it. And then we're going to jump into question and answer after Lynn and I have an opportunity to have our little fireside chat here on working with your utility throughout your fleet transition plan. So Lynn, welcome. Lynn Felson, Program Manager, DTE Detroit, in Detroit, Michigan. I have the great pleasure to get to work with her very often. And I know she's coming with us today with a lot of information and expertise. Lynn, do you want to give a moment to introduce yourself if I didn't overdo it?
Thanks, Maureen. Yeah, I'm Lynn Felson. I'm a program manager at DTE Energy. We are considered a large investor-owned utility. We're headquartered in Detroit, Michigan, and we service most of the state of Michigan, and we have assets in about 24 other states. We service natural gas and electric utility customers. We have over 3 million customers in total, with the electric business predominantly in the southeast region of Michigan. And so, yeah, we've been working together for quite some time, Maureen, trying to structure pilots here in the state of Michigan and Detroit area for transit.
And you've been very successful. But today I'm going to approach you kind of like a fleet. And again, many of these questions are really important for someone to be successful through their fleet transition plan. So, let's say that I am a transit agency and I'm looking to electrify my fleet. What are the steps I should take to get connected to the right person at the utility? I know I'm hearing from fleets, across the state or across other states even, they're saying, I don't know who to call. I pick up and dial a 1-800 number and nobody knows who to connect me with. Who should they be connected with?
Yeah, so it can be challenging. Most utilities have a lot of employees, so it's kind of hard, sorting through the weeds and finding the right person. But what I would say is that most utilities these days have transportation electrification business units, so which is relatively new. We have a team of people that focus only on helping our customers transition to electric vehicles or alternative fuel vehicles. And so if you can't find the right person through like a 1-800 number or an email, I would honestly check their website, because more than likely you're going to find something on electric vehicles on the website, and then it'll transition you to the right person.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's great advice, and we'll definitely push that story forward to others. And as a utility, when I call you for the first time regarding my fleet electrification plan, I've reached you, I've connected with you. What are the things you want to hear from me, and why is it so important to hear these things?
I guess at a high level, what are your goals and why, and what does your timing look like? I think we've heard it over and over again. You want to get your utility involved immediately, like right when you start thinking about it, start talking about it with them. There's so many advantages, not only in terms of helping you ensure that you have charging facilities ready to go when those vehicles that you order are delivered, but we get at the table and we work with your architects and your designers and your staff, and help you with low-no, and even talk with the manufacturers to make sure that everybody is in alignment and in making sure that this goes as smoothly as possible. Because if you don't have, as a customer, if you don't have a good experience, it's not advantageous for you to scale your fleet to a cleaner fleet. We don't want you to have a headache about this. We want you to enjoy the process. So.
No, I appreciate that. And you mentioned all the things you would do to help support me as a fleet owner, as a fleet operator. Should I just simply be calling and say, hey, I need help. I'm about to electrify my fleet. I need your support. Is there anything else I should be asking for?
Well, so that would just start a big discussion, really big discussion. What are you looking to do? Talking about like, how big is your fleet? Describe your fleet to me. What is your turnover rate? A lot of things that John had just, I think he had a slide in there about, some of the things that he's asking, same things I'm asking. What is your timing? Where are the funding gaps? What does your facility look like? What facility are you putting it in? And, and that just brings up a whole lot of homework that we do to make sure that, do you have a fleet transition plan? Are you working with a firm to develop a fleet transition plan? So there's a lot of components to making this happen, and we've helped customers do it. So, we've learned along the way how to get you to the finish line. It's just some customers need a little more help than others. And it starts with, what are your goals? What are your goals? Are you looking to pilot a few vehicles, or are you looking for a major expansion or impact? Are you looking at a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, or are you just going to dip your toe in the water and try it out? And so it's every customer is very unique. And so we try to just start from ground zero and figure out how to get them to where they need to be.
I mean, this is a lot of useful information, and something for me as a fleet owner that I need to have this information. Is there any cost to me in this process in working with my utilities, or ever any cost to kind of start to lay the groundwork and get that stakeholder relationship developed?
No, really. Not speaking from DTE, we don't charge a fee for these services. I don't think most utilities do. We're happy that that's part of our job is to help you with the product that we provide. And so, we have a fleet advisory services that we developed as a result of some of the pilot programs that we have structured. And so it's a 7-step program. And I think, John, it was interesting. He just had a slide with a 7-step. And we have a similar one where we will do an operational assessment with you. We'll work with the manufacturer to do route analysis work. We'll do recommendations or show you to our online showroom so that you can know exactly what the products are, what the prices are, what the specs of the products, individual products are in that segment. We'll look at fueling requirements, charging facility needs. I hear from more often, most customers, especially in transit, are concerned about space. How do I do this? I don't have enough space. And I will just say that we have had to work through some very interesting obstacles, but with every problem, there are a set of solutions. And so talking with different professionals and having a team behind you, there's ways to figure it out. And I think John had great pictures of different setups based on whatever challenges those fleets were looking at. Then we, when your project becomes real, we parallel path to make sure we're grid ready by the time your vehicles are delivered. And then we work with you to make sure you're checking the boxes, or your employees are trained, your drivers, your maintenance. Do you have enough aftermarket support from your manufacturer? Are your first responders trained? Are you ready to go? Because it's a scary thing once you're driving a different kind of vehicle, and we just want to make sure you're comfortable with it before you're on the road. We have tools like total cost of ownership tools to help you with the same things that like the manufacturers are helping you with, we're also at the table, you know, looking at those things, looking at those plans, trying to help you along the way. A little more hands-on with transit than other fleets, typically, but we can be as involved as you want us to be. If you just want us in the background, we're happy to do it. If you need us to be more involved, we can do that too. So,
yeah, well, great. No, really appreciate what you're offering the community. You know, I guess, have you ever had a surprising moment when someone has reached out to you after they've received their vehicles and said, hey, guess what? I'm electrifying my fleet. What do I do now? Or what would happen if someone never called you? Like, what that look like? Yeah,
that wouldn't be good. No, we haven't, and we do a lot of outreach to make sure that they're aware that this is happening, that their industry sector is transitioning to cleaner vehicles, that we are here, and that we're familiar with like FTAA Low-No. We can help them through that process. We can help them with infrastructure, and you know, we get pulled in all kinds of situations, and every project is different, but we haven't had a phone call like that, knock on wood, yet.
that's good news. That's good news. Yeah, no, really appreciate it. You know, when you look at a successful deployment project, you know, it's successful in the terms of, you know, they've gone through the planning and they've deployed. What does that time frame typically look like? You know, and I say typically, knowing that there's some supply chain constraints that we're looking at now, not on the vehicle side so much as the infrastructure side now, but like, what is that range from, you know, that first phone call to the vehicle, you know, being, you know, driven, or the rubber hitting the road?
Well, I know if a project is connected with the FTAA Low-No, they usually give you 3 years to complete the project. It can be challenging. It all depends on the scope that we're working with. There may be there's definitely going to be supply chain issues right now. We have a lot of them in our industry, as did automotive, but we're aware of them and we try to work around that. And so there's been all kinds of different things that have popped up with different projects. There may be a Department of Transportation project running, you know, in the same corridor is a transit project, and working with those state agencies to make sure we're not messing each other up. It can be daunting at times, but in the end, we all figure it out. It's communication, really. So I would give yourself a good 3 years. It may not take that long. It may be very simple, depending on what you're working with and what the capacity is at site and how many upgrades you need. But I would give yourself time. And that's why you don't want to call the utility at the last minute.
Yeah, I love that. So what I'm hearing is a key takeaway is collaboration, communication, and time are critical components of success.
Yeah.
So I'd love to give you a moment to tell us a little bit about DTE's Fleet Transition Program. And with that, Mike, could you go to the next slide, and how it aims to support their transition to battery electric?
Yeah, so this slide really depicts our fleet advisory services, and I apologize, this is the only slide I could come up with today. But really, it's, you know, us coming to the table as your advisor, your free advisor. Like, this is what I want to do. This is how we're going to come in and help you. If it can be as simple as arming you with questions to ask your manufacturer, to really studying what your infrastructure looks like, and does it make sense to put the chargers here or here? And how does it look based on that route analysis study that you're doing? You know, what are your goals again? So we help with everything from the infrastructure piece to giving you tools so that you can find the right vehicle that you want. There's plenty of manufacturers for both chargers and vehicles out there. And we have an online tool that has it all in one spot. So you can just take your time and do it like an online shopping thing, and then reach out to a manufacturer and have that discussion about, you know, what is your vehicle like? What are the battery sizes like? What's the efficiency typically like? What are my warranties? What is your aftermarket support after I buy the vehicle in terms of maintenance and that kind of thing? So we can help you get to that point. We can also help you with your financial analysis. A lot of the same things John talked about, like what is my total cost of ownership, the vehicle, the fuel, the maintenance, etc. And then, you know, how do we develop a work plan? We'll come to the table with a project plan and help to make sure that we're all talking together to make sure that your infrastructure and your chargers are going to be live and commissioned before your vehicles get delivered. And so we have a plan of attack in terms of timing for all of that work, pre-deployment training, and go. And that's just, you know, that's how we've done it. I think that's how a lot of utilities are doing it these days. A lot of our transit customers are now on autopilot, and they don't need me as much because they've been through it and they kind of know how to get things done. But we're here to help, of course. So it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, Lynn. Lynn, you offer so much to the industry and so much to the Southeast Michigan in support of this transition plan. With that, I'd like to invite John back to video and go into our question and answer discussion period. We did have a question that just came through about route modeling and how that route energy model is performed. Is it with the use of software or other means? And I know from a CalSTART side, we have our own route modeling software that we use to help model that. But I would like to open this opportunity up to you, Lynn and John, to address this question.
Sure. Typically, we would, Wendell does not do the very detailed route modeling, which more complex routes would require. For that, we would bring in somebody like CalSTART to do that, which is software-based. For more simpler routes, we typically will look at what the energy consumption is for the existing fleet, the diesel bus or gasoline-powered vehicles. Look at the routes and look at the data that we have on the routes, the timing, etc. And we will we have our own tools that we use that are a little bit more crude and more high level, but provide us for simple routes and a pretty good idea of the energy consumption of that route. But again, I would stress for more complex and longer routes, it would probably be best to model them through somebody like CalSTART.
No, appreciate it. Lynn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add that some of the manufacturers will also do those simulations for you, and then we can determine, you know, what is your mile per gallon electric versus your mile per gallon gasoline or diesel that you're currently riding. And then you could see what the fuel savings is.
Nope, appreciate it. Yeah, that's looking at the efficiency side, the kilowatt hour per mile versus the miles per gallon. So, and that's a really important factor that feeds into all of this. So as we wait for additional questions from our attendees today, both of you shared some complexities that you've dealt with about, you know, fleets and transits being space constrained. I know, John, you shared some very interesting, innovative solutions for charging. One of them being the distributed energy charging in the depot using pantograph, and also the pull down retractable chargers. Are there other innovations in the works that you might know of that are coming about that will help offset those, you know, the needs that people being space constrained and trying to charge indoors?
Well, there's a variety of different charger initiatives ongoing. One of the things that's happening that I see is very interesting and potentially very useful is the mating of chargers with batteries. There are several manufacturers now that sell a charger that actually is 240 volt charger, but it can charge at the level 3 high power charger, because it charges the battery, and then when the bus or vehicle needs the charge, it can actually deliver 150 kW charge off a 240 volt service, which can help in situations where you may be more rural, you may have some real difficulties getting the power that you need. And some of these chargers can provide options to that. Chargers are constantly being innovated. So, you know, we're real close to, in fact, there's several chargers installed in the US already that are actually charging on the road. As you drive, your vehicle gets charged. We're looking at putting one of those in at the Buffalo Niagara International Airport. I know other airports are looking at it, where charging will be embedded in the road, and as the passenger bus for rental cars comes through, it actually is charging the whole time it's driving the loop. So there are a lot of innovations coming. So we're constantly just looking at what they are.
No, appreciate that. We've had a couple more questions come in. One of them is centered around the Proterra bankruptcy and how it might affect agencies that have already purchased Proterra buses for their fleets. And what would the transition plan for such agencies who already paid for the buses look like? Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you because I don't think we have enough information or guidance to speak on that yet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Unfortunately, we don't. You know, we're working to figure out, get more information on bankruptcy and how Jared mentioned everything is segregating out between Volvo and now Phoenix with the transit business. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of good information to share in terms of existing orders or agencies who had planned to go that route. So definitely more that we need to research and look into and share with folks when we have a firm grasp on what the best information is.
No, appreciate that. And Lynn, I'm going to look to you because I do know that several of the transits that you've been working with have already acquired their Proterra buses and are very pleased with those buses. Have you heard any insight from those teams yet, other than the news of the purchase agreements in play?
I've heard of one in particular that has had some maintenance needs that have been on hold because everything's tied up in the courts. So I think, you know, I think the future looks bright. Volvo's a big name in the industry. I think it's timing, and I'm hopeful that that they'll be able to get service soon. So
yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, we'll continue to monitor that and keep everyone up to date as best as possible as the story there unfolds. The next question we've gotten: are there incentives for utilities to invest in energy storage in partnership with an agency? I know, Lynn, you guys have looked at this over the last couple of years.
yeah, we're one of the only utilities in the country, from what I understand, that has looked at this. We've decided to table it for now. It's just the timing is off. But in terms of like battery storage incentives, but we do have another program called Charging Forward for e-fleets. And that is a pretty incredible program. So what we've done is we're regulated by the state of Michigan, and we've gone up to our regulators and said, you know, to help our customers accelerate adoption of cleaner vehicles, because it is quite an investment, we'd like to offset some of their costs in the infrastructure costs that are usually borne upon the customer to get the charger up and running. And so we have on our website a whole bunch of chargers, different brands, different network providers, different sizes that are approved in the system. So if you pair up one of those chargers with your fleet vehicle, we can provide you a rebate to offset the cost of the installation of that charger. So when you hire your electrician to do the work to get the charger installed and commissioned, and provide that information, the paperwork to us, we'll send you a rebate check. So it's been very helpful to customers. It's a very popular program. We've been up to Lansing a couple times, asking to continue the program. And so another reason for you to check with your utility early on, you don't want to buy the wrong charger and not get the rebate. You want to make sure that you're compliant with the regulated program and take advantage of these cost cuts.
Nope, appreciate that. Kind of looking back on the energy storage discussion, V2G, that's, come into play as far as, providing, electricity back to the grid. Is that something that DTE is allowing, or the state of Michigan at this time?
We started a V2G pilot, and we encountered some technical problems. And so that is also being tabled right now. We're looking for the industry to advance a little bit. And that pilot was for school buses because there's a lot of idle time on school buses. The utilization for transit is a lot more demanding than a school bus. And so our pilot is really structured about focusing on how to provide localized resiliency through battery storage through school buses. So.
No, appreciate that. That's a very good use case. John, on your side, V2G and energy storage?
We've had similar experience that Lynn is discussing. One of the issues that we have in New York State, and again, we're looking mostly at school buses because of the fact that when they get back from their morning run, they sit until they have to leave in the afternoon. So there is time that they actually could give back to the grid. But in New York State, we don't have the tariff set up right now to do that. For the utilities to purchase back the energy, right now they would use distributed generation tariffs, which are not economically viable for school districts. So the mechanisms aren't in place yet. And so, we've investigated it. We've talked with school districts. There's some interest, but to date, nothing's happened.
Got it. Got it. John, just one more thing for you. As you talked about the distance, chargers need to be away from the vehicles and how far away the the energy or the switch gear panel has to be from a vehicle. Is there somewhere a fleet could go to get this kind of information so that it's kind of like a one-stop shop? Like, here are the distances I have to work with, so that when they are calling a utility or calling Wendell or even CalSTART, that they're kind of coming in informed?
Not that I'm aware of. Most of the information comes from the manufacturers, but each manufacturer is slightly different. So, basically, I would rely on your engineer or architect.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then I think we have time for at least one last question. What is the planning that is required for transit agencies to replace or retire their lithium-ion batteries for secondary purposes, either at the half-life or at the end of life of batteries? Are there any cooperatives working on such a second use application?
So in terms of utilities, there are none in the states that I'm aware of. We were one of the first ones looking at that, and we decided to table it. My suggestion would be to talk to your manufacturer about whether or not they're going to provide a battery lease program, what they're going to do at end of useful life of that battery. Are they taking it away? Are they going to recycle it? So that it's not sitting on your property when it's taken off the vehicle. Usually they all have a plan. It's just some of their plans are very different than others. So I would talk with the manufacturer.
And I would echo what Lynn said. In addition to that, some manufacturers are offering extended warranties that'll include battery replacement at some point in the life of the battery. So to the extent you can push that off to the manufacturer and have it be economical for you, that's probably the better solution.
Nope, appreciate it. Mike, before we close out today, anything you'd like to add?
No, just thanks to our panelists for being here. I think really great information, and just can't reiterate enough the importance of engaging with utility early and often, like Lynn mentioned, and then working with a solid firm like Wendell on your infrastructure needs. And there really is an important partnership there. So the quicker that you engage with both those partners, the more successful you'll be in this whole process. So I appreciate them coming on today and giving their perspective. It's really helpful.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. We'll walk away from today knowing that we need to collaborate, communicate, and plan early. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
for
you.
having us.